Welcome back to Tmeztv. Just pulled up on the alley, gasoline alley in Speedway down the street from the Indianapolis 500. My buddy Lee has a sprint car, and I want to talk sprint car basics today. All right, so what we got here is a traditional non-wing sprint car. This is a DRC, even has the old school dash 12 headed motor, which is, they've been probably building these for what, 20 years? 30 years maybe? But when you're non-wing racing, 800 horsepower is all you need. And this beauty right here, 800 horsepower. All right, so sprint cars are a torsion bar car. It has these arms going to a torsion bar that runs through here. So this is what the torsion bar looks like. And if this thing will slip off here, they're splined, the arms go on it, and then it has this stop here, and you can adjust the car higher or lower off of the stops. The range in this bar is typically 975, 1,000, 1,025, and 1,050. That's pretty much what everybody has in their car. They do have a half bar in between. It's got a 28 or a 30 to 33 gallon tank. Each fuel tank over this bad boy is big. They're plastic shells, and then they have a bladder inside of them. And so it's like a flexible rubber, you know, basically if you back this thing to the fence, this thing will crush and it won't puncture fuel. All right, so it's a live axle rear end, and what that means is this whole axle spins and it has these bird cages holding. Basically, these go on by themselves, and you got these 2 points that connect everything, and that holds the whole rear end in it, ultimately. If we go to the other side. All right, so over here, this is the Jacob's ladder or the W-link, and it holds the rear end from going side to side, but it lets it go up and down. And then ultimately from that, we got the drive shaft. So this is the torque tube, and that bolts to the rear end. This is the ball, what lets it float over here, and then there's a drive shaft just inside of that torque tube by itself, connected directly to the back of the crank. All right, so this right here, if you lift that up, that's out of gear, which means it's in neutral. If you push it down, that is in gear, and that is why we use a push truck to push us off. We roll up to the line. We roll up to the line with it out of gear here, and then we put it into gear, and the truck pushes us off. All right, so in the rear end, it's a quick change rear end, and so we can go, you know, real easy from a 526 to a 536. And it's as easy as just pulling these bolts off, sliding the cover off, and draining out the oil. All right, so we got this Wilwood rear caliper, and it's only a single brake line to the master cylinder. And then from the master cylinder, we have a second line that goes all the way up here to the left front. Those are the only brakes on the car, but because it is a live axle, both rear tires slow down. So this is a quick release steering wheel, and you pull that and it comes off, and when you let that go, it locks it on. All right, so this is the steering gear, and this is how the car steers. It is power steering, run off of the back of the camshaft, which also runs the fuel pump. So off of the steering gear goes the pitman arm, and that runs down the drag link, which is this bar here, to the front axle. It's just a straight axle car. So from the drag link here is the tie rod, and that connects to the right front, and that's I feel like a lot of the times you see the left front wheel kind of floaty, And a lot of the times it's because the car is, all the weight's on that tire. But because that tire is hitting ruts and stuff, it's also moving this side because of the tie rod being connected to it. The steering gear also has a torsion bar in it. And so a lot of the times I'll be turned left and the wheels will not be turning left with me, but it really soaks up the holes and basically keeps your hands from getting ripped off the steering wheel, I believe. All right, so you can see these two both have bends in them, and ultimately that just lets, when the left front tire goes here, it clears so it doesn't hit soon. And then the same going this way, it lets the tire get in here so you get good steering angle. All right, so the front end's pretty simple. It's a solid beam axle. It has 2 king pins to a spindle, and then all these are just aluminum parts bolted to the spindle. I have shocks on the car, but the shocks run from here to the frame. Like the back of the car, we got torsion bar front suspension as well. One of the interesting things about sprint cars is it only has 2 radius rods on this side, and that kind of keeps the axle from flopping back and forth. But on the left side, there's only 1. And if you had 2 on the other side, it would just bind up too quickly. So the one lets it flex, but it also makes it the weak link on the front end, I feel like. This is kind of at you, Lee. I'm a big fan of steel tie rods and a steel left front radius rod because it is a weak link.
So good, that's what it's
Yeah, you probably ought to put steel on that. All right, so that's most of the car, and then we got the heart of the beast. You know, this is a small block Chevy. Ultimately, it has the old Engler. Is this Engler or Hilborn? This is probably Hilborn injection, older style. Each cylinder is soaking this much air in, so it's not quite like your 754 barrel carburetor. We're talking 2.5 inches per cylinder. It's all fed off of the back of the motor. So we got a fuel pump right here, and that makes the pressure that goes to the injection. And these fuel lines go directly into the cylinder, and that's the nozzle that shoots the fuel into the motor. Another really interesting thing about sprint cars is they don't have batteries in them because they don't have starters, they don't have lights, they don't have any of that kind of stuff. But what they do have is a generator. And so this is a magneto that creates spark when it turns off of magnets. And ultimately, if you spin, you could take it out of the car, spin it by hand, and somebody can hold this in and you could shock the heck out of your friend, basically. You do not want to get shocked by that. It's 18 volts. Off of the generator, it does have like a 6AL MSD Pro ignition box. So I believe the ignition box runs it all. This is a TAC. There's very minimum on electrical. Even the gauges, it's just oil pressure and water temperature. Okay, so what is this big tank up here? Okay, so we got the radiator right here, which is pretty conventional, right? Well, what's this big tank? This big tank is the dry sump tank. And what that means is the oil in the motor is scavenged out as fast as possible, pumped into this, and then pumped through the motor off of this pump here. And what that does is allow you to make big horsepower. All right, so 4 shocks on the car, and they are adjustable. So if you turn these knobs here, ultimately, for the most part, on compression, they're usually the same, but when you adjust this, it lets them come up easier, like you would want on a drag car maybe, so the thing launched really good. You know, as the night goes on, you let rebound out, so when we start, there'll be 100 pounds of rebound, but by the end of the night, we're at like 40 pounds of rebound. And so that lets the weight transfer faster to the back of the car. All right, so we got left rear shock, and it just slides on and bolts right here, right? A lot of times you'll see guys have cables. So the cable will just go from here into the car and allow you to turn the knob in the car and adjust the shock. So on our left rear shock, because we don't have a wing, the rebound number is really big. So you're usually 50 pounds of compression on a left rear shock and like 300 pounds of rebound to 500 pounds of rebound. Guys like Robert Blue, I've heard run as much as 1,000 to 1,200 pounds of rebound, which means that thing, you can't even move it. I mean, come on, 1,200 pound man to hang on that thing just to get it to move? That's crazy. But ultimately, you have to keep this corner down with, you know, going left, otherwise you'll flip. When we're doing the right rear shock, typically it's 100 to 125 pounds of compression. And then a lot of times you'll do a rebound adjustable where you can only adjust rebound, or sometimes you can have it to where you can only adjust compression. So tuning in your shocks is so crucial in this sport because ultimately it's just timing where the car lands in the corner. And you don't want it to land any sooner than the middle of the corner, otherwise it gets you tight. And you don't want it to land past that, otherwise it's just never hooked up. So these just are a timing device to get the back of the car into the ground or make it do cool wheelies, is what I like. That's kind of what I like to do. All right, I know this thing wasn't clean, but I was just hanging out in the shop. And as always, thank you so much for watching Tmeztv. I'm out.